I threw away my marriage for a man who blocked my number the second I told him I was pregnant with his baby. I had an affair at a work conference, and now my 3-year-old son asks every day when daddy is coming home, not knowing that mommy destroyed our family for someone who never cared about me at all. I'm Iris, 29F, married to Nathan, 31M, for 5 years, together for 8. We have a 3-year-old son named Oliver. Or we did, until I made the worst decision of my life at a work conference in Atlanta. The affair wasn't some grand romance or emotional connection. It was purely physical, which somehow makes it worse. His name was Derek, some sales director from our partner company. We'd met briefly at previous conferences but never exchanged more than pleasantries. This time, he sat next to me during the keynote presentation and started making jokes about the speaker's tie. I laughed. I haven't laughed like that in months, maybe years. Nathan and I had fallen into this routine where we discuss Oliver's schedule and household tasks but rarely talk about anything else. We were roommates raising a child together, not lovers. Derek was attractive in an obvious way. Tall, confident, expensive suit, the kind of man who probably never doubted himself about anything. During the lunch break, he asked if I wanted to grab drinks after the sessions ended. I said yes without thinking about it. The hotel bar was crowded and loud. Derek kept buying rounds and asking about my work, my opinions on industry trends, things Nathan never bothered to ask about anymore. He made me feel smart and interesting instead of just tired and overwhelmed. When he suggested we continue the conversation in his room, I knew exactly what he was really asking. I should have said no. Should have gone back to my own room and called my husband and son. Instead, I followed him upstairs and spent the next 2 hours having the best sex of my life with a virtual stranger. He was attentive in ways Nathan hadn't been in years. Present, focused, like I was the only thing that mattered in the world. We had sex 3 times that night, and I didn't think about my family once until I was getting dressed to leave. The guilt hit me on the elevator ride down to my room. What had I done? I was a wife, a mother, not the kind of woman who had one-night stands at business conferences. I took a scalding shower and promised myself it would never happen again, but Derek texted me the next morning. Just a simple message about the incredible night with a coffee cup emoji. Something about seeing his name on my phone made my stomach flutter in a way it hadn't in years. I texted back. Just a thank you, but it was enough to start a conversation that lasted all day. Flirty messages between conference sessions, photos of our lunch, complaints about boring presentations. By evening, I was back in his room. The second night was even better than the first. More relaxed, more intimate somehow. We talked afterward, lying in his hotel bed, about our jobs and travel and movies we liked. Normal conversation that felt extraordinary because it wasn't about daycare pickup times or whose turn it was to do laundry. I flew home the next day with Derek's number in my phone and the secret that felt like a bomb in my chest. Nathan picked me up at the airport with Oliver, who threw himself into my arms chattering about his weekend with Daddy. I held my son and smiled at my husband and felt like the worst person alive, but not guilty enough to stop. Derek and I started texting regularly. Good morning messages, photos from our days, late-night conversations when Nathan was asleep beside me. He lived in Dallas, 4 hours away, which felt both safe and torturous. Far enough that we couldn't see each other casually, close enough that it was possible. We made plans to meet halfway for a weekend. I told Nathan I was going to a spa retreat with my college roommate. The lie came so easily it scared me. I'd never been a good liar before Derek. The hotel in Austin was nicer than anywhere Nathan and I had stayed in years. Derek booked a suite with a view of the river, ordered room service, treated me like I was someone worth celebrating. We barely left the bed for 36 hours. That weekend changed everything. It wasn't just physical anymore. Derek made me feel like the woman I used to be before marriage, and motherhood wore me down to nothing. He remembered details from our conversations, asked follow-up questions about things I'd mentioned weeks earlier, made me feel heard in ways I'd forgotten were possible. Nathan noticed the change in me when I got home. I was happier, more energetic, actually initiated sex for the first time in months. He seemed pleased but confused by my sudden affection. If he suspected anything, he didn't say so. The affair continued for 3 months. Secret trips, late-night phone calls, a double life that became easier to maintain than I ever imagined. Derek would send me flowers at work with generic cards that could have been from anyone. We had our own inside jokes, our own private world that existed separately from my real life. I was falling in love with him. Or maybe I was falling in love with who I was when I was with him. Someone desirable and interesting instead of just exhausted and overwhelmed. Someone whose thoughts mattered, whose body was appreciated, whose company was actively sought out. Nathan and I had sex exactly twice during those 3 months, both times brief and mechanical. I felt like I was cheating on Derek, which should have been a wake-up call but somehow wasn't. Everything started unraveling when I missed my period. I'd been on birth control for years, but Derek and I hadn't used condoms after the first few times. We were both supposedly monogamous with our spouses, supposedly safe. The logic seemed sound at the time. The pregnancy test was positive on the first try. 2 bright pink lines that felt like a death sentence. I sat on the bathroom floor and calculated dates, trying to figure out if there was any possibility this baby could be Nathan's. There wasn't. Nathan and I had sex once during my fertile window. Derek and I had sex 4 times. The timeline was clear, even if I wanted to pretend otherwise. I called Derek from my car in a parking lot, sobbing into the phone while other parents picked up their kids from daycare. He was quiet for a long time after I told him about the pregnancy. He asked if I was sure if the baby was definitely his. I confirmed both. His response was measured, careful. He said we needed to think about this, that he couldn't leave his wife right now because she'd just been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. The timing was terrible for everyone involved, of course. His wife was sick and I was pregnant with his baby. The universe had a sense of humor. We agreed to talk more later, but Derek's texts became shorter and less frequent over the next few days. The man who'd been messaging me constantly for months was suddenly too busy to respond to basic questions about what we were going to do. I scheduled an appointment with my doctor, ostensibly for a routine checkup. She confirmed what I already knew. 8 weeks pregnant, everything looking normal. She asked about prenatal vitamins and genetic testing like this was a planned pregnancy with my loving husband. Nathan noticed my mood changes. I was snapping at Oliver, barely eating, staying up late staring at my phone waiting for Derek to text me back. When Nathan asked what was wrong, I told him I was stressed about a work project. More lies. They were piling up like debris from a shipwreck. Derek finally called me back after a week of minimal contact. His voice was different, distant. Professional almost. He said he'd been thinking about our situation and believed it was best if we ended things. His wife needed him, and I had my family to think about. When I asked about the baby, he told me that was my decision to make. He couldn't be part of it either way. Then he hung up and blocked my number. 4 months of daily contact, weekend getaways, declarations of love, and he disappeared like he'd never existed. Like I'd imagined the whole thing. I was completely alone with a secret that would destroy my marriage and a pregnancy I couldn't explain. Nathan was planning a family vacation for the summer, excited about Oliver starting preschool, talking about maybe trying for another baby soon. I wanted to tell him everything. The weight of keeping it secret was crushing me, making it hard to breathe. But I knew what would happen. He'd leave, take Oliver with him, and I'd lose everything for a man who'd already abandoned me. So I made an appointment at a clinic downtown. I couldn't have Derek's baby and pretend it was Nathan's. I couldn't blow up my family for someone who wouldn't even return my calls. The night before the appointment, Nathan found me crying in the kitchen after Oliver went to bed. I was holding a glass of wine I couldn't drink, staring out the window at our backyard where my son's toys were scattered across the grass. Nathan wrapped his arms around me from behind and asked what was wrong, noting how distant I'd been lately. I leaned back against his chest and felt like the worst person who'd ever lived. He was being kind and supportive while I carried another man's baby and planned to terminate the pregnancy without telling him any of it. I lied again, claiming work stress. Nathan suggested I take time off, maybe plan a long weekend together as a family. Just the three of us, he said. My husband, my son, and me. The family I was about to destroy with information that would change everything forever. I couldn't do it. I couldn't go to that appointment and keep this secret for the rest of my life. Nathan deserved to know the truth, even if it meant losing everything. Standing in his arms in our kitchen, surrounded. The divorce papers arrived this morning, hand-delivered by a process server who couldn't have been older than 25. Oliver was eating cereal at the kitchen table when the doorbell rang, chattering about his favorite cartoon character while I signed for documents that would legally end my marriage. It's been 4 months since I told Nathan about Derek and the pregnancy. 4 months since I watched my husband's face crumble as I explained how I'd been living a double life for months. How the baby I was carrying wasn't his. How sorry I was for destroying everything we'd built together. Nathan didn't yell or throw things like I'd expected. He just sat down at our kitchen table and stared at me for a long time, like he was trying to reconcile the woman he'd married with a stranger standing in front of him. He asked how long the affair had lasted. I told him 4 months, starting at the Atlanta conference. He nodded slowly and asked about the baby. I whispered that I'd had an abortion the week before, that I couldn't bring Derek's child into our family. Nathan was quiet for so long I thought he might not respond at all. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. He said he couldn't do this anymore, couldn't look at me without thinking about Derek and what I'd done while he was home taking care of our son. He moved out that night. Packed a suitcase while Oliver was sleeping and went to stay with his brother. He's been there ever since, coming by to pick up Oliver for his custody days but refusing to have any conversation that isn't about logistics. The hardest part was telling Oliver why Daddy doesn't live here anymore. How do you explain to a 3-year-old that Mommy made choices that broke the family apart? I told him that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and need to live in different houses for a while. He asks every day when Daddy is coming home, and I don't know how to tell him the answer is never. Derek never responded to my messages about the pregnancy or the abortion. I sent him one final text letting him know it was over, that he didn't need to worry about anything anymore. He didn't even read it. His wife's cancer treatment went well, according to his LinkedIn profile, which I probably shouldn't be checking but can't seem to stop myself from looking at. I've been going to therapy twice a week since everything imploded. Dr. Chen asks hard questions about why I chose to have an affair instead of addressing the problems in my marriage. Why I thought I deserved to have both Nathan's stability and Derek's excitement without consequences. She pointed out during one session that I compartmentalized my life, creating 2 separate realities and convincing myself they didn't affect each other. She's right, but understanding it doesn't make living with the aftermath any easier. I destroyed my marriage for someone who disappeared the moment things got complicated. I lost my family for a fantasy that existed only in hotel rooms and text messages. The custody arrangement gives Nathan primary custody, with me getting Oliver every other weekend and one evening during the week. It's what I agreed to because I couldn't afford to fight him in court. My lawyer said I was lucky Nathan wasn't trying to take Oliver away completely, given the circumstances. Oliver cries every time Nathan drops him off at my apartment. Not because he doesn't want to see me, but because he doesn't understand why his parents live in different places now. He started having nightmares and asking if it's his fault that Daddy left. The guilt of seeing my choices affect my innocent child is almost unbearable. My parents know about the divorce but not the details. I told them Nathan and I grew apart, which isn't technically a lie. They're disappointed but supportive, offering to help with Oliver when needed. My mother keeps asking if there's any chance for reconciliation, and I can see in her eyes that she suspects there's more to the story than I'm telling. Nathan started dating someone 2 months ago. Her name is Kelly, and she's a teacher at Oliver's preschool. She's young and sweet and everything. I stopped being somewhere along the way. Oliver talks about her constantly during our visits, how she helps him with his art projects and reads him stories. I should be happy that my son likes Nathan's new girlfriend, but instead I feel replaced. Kelly gets to be part of Oliver's daily life while I'm relegated to weekends and Wednesday dinners. She gets the life I threw away, the man I took for granted, the family I destroyed for someone who never cared about me at all. Work has been difficult. The Atlanta conference company cut ties with us after someone reported policy violations. Derek apparently claimed I initiated everything and made him uncomfortable, which is rich coming from the man who invited me to his hotel room. I wasn't fired, but I was passed over for a promotion I'd been working toward for 2 years. The other women at work treat me differently now. Word got around about my situation, and I can feel their judgment even when they're being polite. I'm the cautionary tale, the woman who had everything and threw it away for an affair. They look at me and see their own worst fears about what could happen if they made similar choices. I've tried dating, mostly because my therapist suggested it might help me understand what I'm actually looking for in a relationship. The dates have been disasters. I either compare every man to Nathan and find them lacking, or I compare them to Derek and remember how hollow that connection actually was. Most men my age want someone without baggage, someone who can give them their full attention. I'm a divorced single mother who destroyed her marriage for a one-night stand that turned into an affair. Not exactly prime dating material. The apartment I moved into is small and cramped, nothing like the house Nathan and I shared. Oliver's room here is barely big enough for a twin bed and a small dresser. He asks why his room at Daddy's house is bigger, and I don't have a good answer that doesn't involve explaining how Mommy's bad choices led to financial consequences. Nathan kept the house, the good furniture, most of our friends. I got the guilt, the shame, and every other weekend with my son. The math doesn't work out in my favor, but it's what I deserve. I made the choices that led here, and now I have to live with them. Some nights I lie awake thinking about the moment everything started going wrong. Not the conference in Atlanta, but months before that. The first time Nathan tried to initiate intimacy and I turned him down because I was tired. The first time he wanted to talk about something important and I was too distracted by my phone. The first time I chose resentment over communication. Derek was a symptom, not the disease. The real problem was that I'd stopped trying to be a good wife long before I became an unfaithful one. I'd taken Nathan's love for granted and convinced myself I deserved more excitement, more attention, more everything. Now I know what more looks like. It looks like eating frozen dinners alone while my son has family meals at his father's house. It looks like spending holidays by myself because I'm no longer welcome at family gatherings. It looks like watching my ex-husband build a new life with someone who won't betray him the way I did. The pregnancy test is still in my bathroom drawer. I keep it as a reminder of how quickly everything can change, how one positive result can reveal the house of cards you've been building for months. 2 pink lines that represented the end of everything I thought I wanted to keep. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd been honest with Nathan from the beginning. If I told him I was feeling neglected and wanted more from our marriage. If I'd gone to counseling instead of going to Derek's hotel room. If I'd fought for what I had instead of looking for something else. But wondering doesn't change anything. I made my choices, and now I live with the consequences. Every day, for the rest of my life, I'll be the woman who had a loving husband and threw it away for someone who didn't even care enough to stick around when things got complicated. The worst part isn't the loneliness or the financial stress or even the guilt. It's knowing that somewhere out there, Derek is probably living his normal life with his recovered wife, completely unaffected by the destruction he helped create. While I'm still picking up pieces of the life I shattered for him.